Hi everybody, welcome back. Jen Keller here again. I'm really excited to bring you this now series of animal drawing here at Aurora Public Art. Today we're going to do a little switch up from studying mammals, and we are going to work on this gorgeous guy, Irwin from the Phillips Park Zoo, an American alligator. So I hope your pens and pencils are all ready, and let's get started. Here we have our handsome man, Irwin. And the first thing we're going to do is we are going to draw his head. Of course, we always start with the head. Make sure your paper is horizontal, and you're going to want to start way over on the right hand side of your paper, because as you can see, this guy is a big alligator. He takes up a lot of room. So we want to make sure we have enough room on our paper while we're drawing him. So first thing we're going to do, similar to almost all of our other animals, we're going to start with the skull. We're going to do a circle right over on that side of the page. And then this is for the skull part, he's just chilling. So we have one line kind of coming out for the bottom of his jaw and the other line coming straight down. They have really long, pardon me, they have really long snouts. So we're going to have these lines coming out, again, like our ice cream cone like we talked about with the wolf. So we don't come all the way to the tip. A little diagonal line coming down. And you want our bottom line here is going to be a little more straight than our top line, because he's just chilling out there, laying on his comfy slab. So then what we're going to do is we need to measure, because we want to make sure we get this whole guy on our page. We don't want to run out of room, and the best way to do that is to check our proportions, which again is how big or how small something relates to other things. So a lot of times, a lot of artists use a head measurement, and this is not only good for figure drawing, but also animal drawing as well. So Irwin here, this is his head. It might seem like this is part of his head, but that's actually his neck. So this is his head. I'm gonna go 1, and I like to measure with my pencil, mark the end of that. 2, 3, about 3 heads to the end of his body. 4, 5, maybe like 5.5 to the end of that tail. So we're gonna come back and measure here to make sure we have enough room. 1, 2, about 3, then we're gonna make a little mark here for our body. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a little bit, 5.5 to his tail. So here's our marker for the end of his body, his main body, and then here's his tail. They have crazy long tails, right? So after we have those marked in, now we know I'll have enough room on my paper, and we're going to come back and start marking his anatomy in there. Again, we're not going to go crazy, but we want to make sure we get all the body parts in the right part. So we're going to start here with a line. This is for his spinal column, right? His neck muscles are coming out. And crocodiles are big and massive, and their center of gravity is really low to the ground. They have short legs, unlike something like the other, like the wolf we drew last week, or I know we just did the portrait of Tonka, but unlike cats and dogs, they have this super low center of gravity, which is necessary for the way they survive. Good for swimming in swamps. So we're gonna draw a nice big oval here for that chest cavity. It's gonna take up most of this space, right? Make sure that oval doesn't go below this line at all, doesn't go below where his head is, because you see his head is pretty much, it's hard to see with his legs there, but it's pretty much in alignment with the body. So we want to get that oval in there. Sorry. Like I said, I have to draw a little bit at an angle so you guys can see, because if I was right in front of the page, all you'd see would be the back of my shirt. And then we have his hips and the hindquarters here. You kind of use another circle to mark that. And again, we want to make sure that this is all in pretty good alignment with its head, because he's just sitting here chilling. All right, so we got those body parts sort of marked out. And then once we get that in, we can kind of flesh out the rest of his tail. And if you can see here, I mean, technically his skull would be here and his spinal column is here, because all of this thick epidural layer, which is his skin, super, super thick, protecting him from other predators, you know, so there's quite a bit of thickness there. Their muscles, they're super strong. So technically his spinal column would probably be here and then kind of going here, but we're gonna actually kind of mark out the top of his body going into his tail. It's sort of unlike the mammals we've done. It sort of looks like his head goes straight into his neck, all those thick muscles, strong jaw muscles. So we're gonna go up, and this line is gonna come around, and then you can see how this tail actually dips down kind of below his body, is a little bit of an angle. So this line is gonna come down and around like almost like an S shape. So it's gonna come up, and it's gonna come down and around to the tip, just like that. Once you get that shape in there, I mean, this dips in a little bit where his tail is, but you can worry about that detail a little bit later. So then we're going to come in and mark the bottom of his body. He's got this thick neck, and it comes in a little bit. And then, like I said, the bottom of his body comes around, comes up a little bit, right behind that sort of rump area. And then this tail is going to come down. And actually, my tail, I feel like, isn't even low enough. So, but you know, you can play with that. Comes down, it's going to dip down. Around. I mean, if your tail is a little straighter, it's not quite the end of the world. Not quite. All your interpretation. So yeah, now we kind of have the basic shape of our alligator here. And yeah, we'll be moving on to our next step. Let's get those limbs in there. It's an interesting fact about alligators. Now this is a boy, this is Irwin, but the females are very nurturing mothers for being such fierce predators. They will actually protect their babies in their mouth. Isn't that cool? They'll hold them in their mouth because they can't cradle them, I suppose, but help hide them from other predators. So we're going to start here. Again, like we talked about before, this is his shoulder blade up here. His shoulders are up here, and right, similar to the canine, the elbow kind of comes out from here, and he's just laying there, relaxing. I want to say probably that claw comes down there. And this is what we call foreshortening. And that is when an object comes straight out at you. So this is kind of a tricky angle, but I think we can do it. So we're gonna have this elbows kind of here, probably more here, and then it's gonna come out, and then you're gonna do sort of a line like that, because you see how his hand's kind of claws kind of laying out there. And then just to mark that space, I like to do a little line coming up and down, so we sort of know there's his wrist, where that leg is. It looks a little funny, almost like a fan. So, and that's coming straight out at you. And now we're going to work on this hindquarters. So this hip is back here, right? And he's just laying out. So he's got this leg muscle kind of coming out.
knee is probably about right in the center of his body. See right there? A little low, that's okay. Then it's gonna come down. And then this leg is behind the other one. So, and we can't really see it. So we're gonna have this leg come out a little, it's gonna be a little shorter than the other one. That's perspective, right? How we see things, how we perceive things is our perspective. So sort of like that. Nice and simplified, so you kind of see where everything is at. All right, once you get that down, we're gonna come back in here and then we're gonna flush out those legs. So similar to how we did with our wolf, we're gonna put some muscles on those bones. So this is, it almost looks like, if you look at it, it almost looks like this is coming out straight from his neck, which it isn't, but that's kind of the appearance it gets. So this leg is gonna come out and around, but it's not just a straight diagonal. We're going to do a little overlapping here. This is a little trick for foreshortening. You're going to do a little curved line that kind of comes in and comes out. And you can kind of see it here. I actually have a close-up here. You can kind of see how it does that. It kind of comes in, right, and then goes. That's where you can kind of see the little, this joint here. It's hard to see with the bigger photo. So you kind of want to do that with that one and kind of give it that foreshortening. And then you're going to come back around here and again around the back, right, of his, this is where his elbow is. It's kind of coming out. Another interesting thing about alligators, when they walk, when they stand up, their legs kind of go out to the side. So I heard it, imagine it as if they're constantly doing push-ups, which they are. They are very strong. I think if I lived my life doing push-ups, I'd probably be as strong as an alligator. Now we're going to do the back leg. Again, we have this marker here. We have that big, strong thigh in there, and it's going to come down around. And remember that this, you can see how this foot almost at the same level as the back of his belly, right? And then here we have this back leg comes down, dips in a little bit where that knee is. It's going to come back down around. But again, we want to make sure that that hind foot is a little bit higher than the lower foot. There we go. Now we've got more of our basics down of our friendly neighborhood alligator, Mr. Irwin. And we have all these marking lines that we don't really need them anymore, right? Because we have the basics down. We don't need to have all these, are just to kind of help us and guide us and to know where those parts of the body are going to go. And it also just gives our drawings a more solid feeling. The more you know and understand about body parts and anatomy and how all those pieces work together, the more the stronger your drawings are going to be, because they're going to have that sense of weight to them that perhaps they might not have had before you learned all of that. So go ahead and erase all of that. Chilling like a villain, Mr. Irwin. So what I want to do is I want to come back in here, and now we literally have the basics down. You literally have the shape down. You're pretty much now, all it's gravy. It's all gravy. It's all details now. But this is why I like to start from the generals and work to the specifics, because if you don't have the, the right layout down, once you start putting the details on, it's never going to look solid. It's like, I always like to describe it like you wouldn't pick out the curtains before you put in the windows, right? Maybe you would, I don't know, but, or if you're building a house, you pour the foundation before you put up the siding. So we're going to come in here and I want to go in and finish these feet, because this little, it's just bothering me. We just want to have a finished foot, and then we'll go move on to the face, because that's kind of fun. So we're going to come in here, and all we need to really do is pattern out those digits. We want to make sure, and you can see here of my close-up here, you want to see this is kind of like the top of his foot, and then his digits come out. So you don't want to have the digits coming all the way to the tip where that leg is coming out. You want to have they want to come about halfway there. So if you want to do a halfway mark there, you can. And then they're almost like little triangles. So this little, I think he looks so funny. He looks very dainty with that digit sticking out like that. So that one kind of sticks out like that. And then the rest of them are sort of all in a row. The little triangles, with the second to the bottom one being the tallest one. Very similar to, they're actually very similar to our hands. Imagine it. So this one right here, we have the bottom one, the middle one, the third one, and then this is like his pinky. This is going to be your longest digit. And another thing about alligators is that they have webbed feet, and you can't really see it in this photo, but it might be a little fun if you want to put a little webbing in there, since they do spend their life in the swamp. Webbed feet are very important. So then for this hind leg kind of coming behind him, you can't quite see it all, right? It's kind of behind there. So you could just do a couple little simple lines in there, and that'll kind of give the idea of that other foot being back there. And they're kind of at an angle, so you kind of want to do, you can see 1, 2, 3, again 4 digits. So you want to do at least 2 to 3 lines in there. And then you can, that's all you really need to do, because it's sort of behind the other foot and you can't really see a lot of it, right? And then you might want to, this is actually, it's a little flatter, flatten that out a little bit. Mine's a little, not quite as flat as he is, but that's okay. The great thing about it being an artist, it's up for interpretation. So once you get that in there, let's move on to his gorgeous face. Sound like the crocodile hunter, right? His beautiful face. Now, the one thing that's different about alligators and crocodiles is alligators have this kind of bulbous nose. It's a much rounder nose. Crocodiles have a much pointier nose. So that's one way to tell the difference. You want to make sure you get that sort of bulbous nose. And this top jaw is bigger than that bottom jaw. So that's why you have this angle here and why that's a little bit lower. So you want to make sure you get that bulbous sort of round shape in there. And then we're going to go up and we're going to mark his eyes. His eyes are very far back near the top of his head. So you want to have those marked maybe halfway, just at the top there, of where that, if you can still see your circle line. I can kind of see mine because I have to draw really dark here so you guys can see it. And then we have our football shape again. So just a little football shape. They don't always have that. Sometimes they're a little rounder. But since our buddy here is chilling, you just put that in. It's a little dark. You can, if you want to go in later and do little details, they usually have a little slit for their eyes, similar to cats. But it's sort of so tiny, it's hard to see. And my eye's a little big, but I want you guys to be able to see it. Right? And then, oh, I erased this line. And then up top here, you want to make sure to get another bump. And you want it at an angle, right? Because that's our perspective of where that other top line is. Now you also want to make sure, because these eyes kind of sit on top of their head, so you can put a little line right on top of that eye right there, and that's going to give it that appearance that it's kind of raised up like that. So basically you have your eye shape here, and then you're gonna do a line right on top like that, if that makes sense. I'm gonna draw a little bigger so you guys can see it. zoomed in as far as I can right now with the camera. So now let's go in and let's give him his alligator smile. I almost said crocodile smile, but he's not a crocodile. So we're just gonna do a light line because this comes at an angle. We wanna make sure to get the angle right, but this is not exactly the way it's gonna go. But this is kind of how you can show how when you're doing like cartooning, how you might wanna simplify it. So you do a light line so we make sure we get that right. And actually his mouth technically ends here, but it can open up all the way wider. And there's a fleshy part that kind of keeps that mouth together. I actually don't know what it's called off the top of my head. But they can open their mouths really, really big to consume loads of yummy food, depending on what your definition of yummy food is. So now we're going to go in and draw this curvy smile. So it's kind of a curve down. This is going to be a little tricky. And then it's another curve down like this. So about the middle, so we have one bump, one curve, another kind of curve like this. So it's curve, curve, and then it's kind of coming up, and right where that kind of jawline is going to curve over this way, right? So, and we want it smooth. We want these kind of like a smooth, like this kind of line. Don't want it like, we don't want it scalloped. You want it smooth. That's a good example. And you don't want it, we don't want it like this, right? I mean, you can do it like that if you want to, if that's your thing, but if you want it accurate. Now, he still looks pretty, looks kind of like a grandpa alligator, right? He looks like a gummy alligator because he doesn't have any teeth. So I'm gonna get some teeth in there for him. So make sure to get some teeth. And alligators, because they have their top jaw is bigger than their bottom jaw, you generally only see their top teeth. That's another difference between alligators and crocodiles. You can do like space out a couple, one or two big ones and then some little ones. Now Irwin here, I can see he's got some sneaky teeth coming out from the bottom. It's probably just one of the things that makes him special. Do some teeth in there. Now he's looking a little more like an alligator. And then we want to get him some nostrils, and those are just two little curved lines that kind of curve in. Like that. So I'm going to do it a little bigger here so you can see. Hopefully. It's sort of like that, if that makes sense. So I know we're doing the full alligator and sometimes it's hard to see with these teeny tiny drawing. And then you can even make that nostril a little rounder. Because like I said, they have kind of like this U-shape snout, unlike our crocodile friends. And then you can kind of bring this jawline and differentiate that neck from that head. And we kind of have the basics of that mouth in there, right? And you can also make this line in here a little lighter, just to kind of make it different, smaller. And then this one you can kind of emphasize his big mouth. All right, so last things last, we have our shape of our alligator. We have sort of a basic face in there, but now we need some scales, which actually aren't scales, they're called scutes because they don't overlap the way scales do, technically speaking. So the scaling could actually take quite some time. So what I'm going to do with you guys is just kind of go over the basics of how you can map everything in. Otherwise this video is you're gonna be here for like another hour, which I'm sure, as much as we'd love, it's not ideal. So what we're gonna do is along the back, they have these kind of bony bumps, substances coming up, thick skin protecting them. And so we're gonna come along, and you don't wanna make them too big, right? And so you want to kind of get those in there. Mine are getting a little big, but so I might do them a little bigger than I would normally, just because I want you guys to see how to do it. So you get these bumps, go right along the top, and then as you get into the tail, what's sort of interesting is their shape sort of changes to being bumps going this way to sort of, they kind of start to go at an angle. Almost remind me of shark fins. So once you get down here, you sort of become more angular. There you go. So you get way down at the end. Ooh, I'm getting a hand cramp. I don't know about you. All right, so then we have this. And then to do the scaling in the back, you're gonna do a light line and you're gonna actually draw a grid. So you're gonna come around, you're gonna do kind of like a curves out, and then you're gonna follow along this tail line, and then they're gonna kind of join together. And then from there, you're gonna take your lines from where your bumps are and do some lines coming down, right? See, does that make sense? And that's gonna help you pattern out where all those go. And then you can do some horizontal lines across the back, depending on how detailed you want to get. And then once you get that figured out, then you can come back in here, and where those rectangles are, you'll know exactly where to fill in those sort of bumps there. And you can follow that along. Oops. You know, and then you can kind of go down here. And again, I'm drawing pretty a little harder than I normally would, but that'll give you that sort of scaling in there, right? And then you can continue that down, and as you can see in here, they join together, and then towards the bottom they sort of become one, and they kind of join together. And then it kind of comes into that, right? And they kind of go, ooh, it's a little funky, that's all right. So, and then I'm going to quickly go over how to fill in the rest of your alligator. You can kind of lightly erase those guidelines if you want. Make sure that your bumps, you press a little harder for your bumps than your guidelines. Make sure your guidelines are always light. You always want to draw your guidelines super light. So down here on his tummy, I'm going to show you how you can kind of pattern out this scaling or scoots. And you basically, again, you want to kind of follow the shape of their body part. So you're going to do it kind of curved, and you do almost like a grid, right? And then in there, you can fill in these oval shapes. And again, I'm doing a little bit bigger because I want you guys to be able to see it. But that's basically the idea of it. And you can do that along his neck. Again, you want to follow that line, right, along his leg. And you can even kind of see now once you get that in there. So basically, I'm going to do it really big so you can see it. Draw your grid, and then for this guy, kind of can just round out those shapes. And you can just, this is similar to what you would do for like a snake or a fish. You would actually do more of a U shape because They actually have scaling and that overlaps, unlike these alligators, which are more, it's a little more like skin, kinda. And then for the tail, it's gonna be similar to that too. Again, you wanna keep your grid lines curved and follow these lines where this kind of scaling is, because that'll get it more accurate. And again, I drew them a little bit bigger, or really big, than you might if you were sitting down, had some time. And then again, you draw this grid pattern, and then there you go. Then all you have to do is work on these details, and look at that. Then you have your alligator patterning, right? And so very similar to when I talked about when you do the, say when we did the wolf, like you don't have to draw every single scale. You can just draw some of them to give an impression, or maybe you want to get that super hyper realistic look in there. And then I'm going to do a little shading on top because they kind of are darker on the top. And then you can also, you see they also have kind of a striping pattern. So you can kind of work on that too. I mean, today I mostly am concerned with you getting the line drawing down. But this is just extra gravy, and they have this striping pattern in, and it's not even stripes. See how much more dark there is than light there? So yeah, so you can work on that, and then eventually pattern out all that. And here you go. So you can see in this one, you can see how I did a little bit of scaling in here, right? A little scaling in here. You can see the pattern. And then in here, I went in and did all that gridding. But see here, I didn't do every single scale. We have a little bit in here. So it's really up to you how much you really want to do, you know? That's the great thing about being an artist. It's all about your interpretation. If you want to have it be super realistic and draw every single scale, go for it. That's awesome. If you don't, if you want to have more of an impression, do that too. You know, it's all about how you want to draw Irwin. Fabulous.
And there you have it. Thanks so much for joining me again. I hope you had a great time learning all about how to draw this amazing creature, Irwin the alligator. And be sure to post your work in the comments. I'd love to see all of your results. Feel free to flush out your drawing any way you want to. You can add color, add more shading. Yeah, just have a good time, all right? So everybody stay safe, stay healthy, and stay creative. Have a great day.